The envelope wasn't sealed. My brother Marcus held it between two fingers like it was contaminated, standing in the middle of his country club dining room while 100 guests pretended not to stare. "This," he said, his voice carrying that particular smugness wealthy men perfect in their 30s, "is our formal position on your situation." The crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon light. Someone's champagne glass clinked against fine china. A woman in pearls whispered something to her husband near the bar. And I stood there in my waitress uniform. Black pants, white shirt, non-slip shoes that squeaked against marble, watching my own brother hand me a family rejection letter at his 40th birthday party. "We think it's time," he continued, loud enough for the front tables to hear, "for you to understand that your choices have consequences." I took the envelope. I opened it. Read every word, while servers moved around me like I was furniture. Then I folded it once, slipped it into my apron pocket, and smiled. That smile changed everything. Because nobody in that country club knew something I'd spent 12 years preparing for. Not even Marcus. Especially not Marcus. And as I looked into his suddenly uncertain eyes, I realized something almost funny. For the first time in his entitled life, he was afraid of me. My name is Lieutenant Commander Alexandra Chen, United States Navy. And the people who spent a decade treating me like hired help were about to learn why you should never mistake silence for weakness, or a uniform you can't see for service that doesn't exist. I arrived at the Riverside Country Club 2 hours before the party. Rain had threatened all morning, turning the Connecticut sky the color of wet concrete. I pulled my decade-old Honda into the service entrance, past the valet stand where Teslas and Mercedes lined up like show ponies. The head caterer, a woman named Gloria who'd hired me 6 months ago, met me at the kitchen door. "Table assignments are on the clipboard," she said, not looking up from her tablet. "VIP section is yours. Your brother specifically requested you." Of course he did. I tied the regulation black apron around my waist, checked that my hair was pulled back tight, and scanned the room through the service window. The Bradford Ballroom smelled like money, imported roses, aged whiskey, the particular cologne wealthy men wear to remind everyone they can afford to smell expensive. I wasn't nervous. I had been trained for rooms far more dangerous than this one. 12 years in the Navy teaches you how to stand perfectly still in spaces designed to make you disappear, how to observe without being seen, how to file every exit, every threat, every power dynamic like intelligence. Through the window, I watched Marcus work the early arrivals. My older brother, 40 years old today, Yale graduate, managing partner at the family firm, $2 million home in Greenwich, a wife who looked like she'd been ordered from a catalog. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations like tribute. Our father stood near the bar, Richard Chen, 72, silver hair, navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, retired Admiral, U.S. Navy. The irony of that still cut like glass. "Champagne needs refilling at table 7, Gloria said behind me. I picked up the bottle and pushed through the swinging door into the theater. The Bradford Ballroom had been designed to intimidate. 30-foot ceilings, crown molding that probably cost more than my car, windows overlooking manicured golf courses where men made deals worth millions while pretending to relax. The tables were set with precision, white linens so crisp they looked sharp, crystal that caught light like tiny prisons, place cards in calligraphy that announced each guest's importance. Table 1, Marcus Chen birthday, Jennifer Chen wife, Admiral Richard Chen father, Catherine Chen mother. Table 2, partners from the firm, names I'd heard for years, Preston, Williams, Mackenzie. Table 7, the extended family, Uncle Thomas, Aunt Margaret, Cousin David who'd made his first million in crypto. And at the end of that table, in a chair facing away from the main room, my place card. Not Alexandra Chen. Just Alex. Like I was staff. Which I suppose, to them I was. I moved through the room refilling glasses, observing. The partners talked about vacation homes. Someone's wife showed off a tennis bracelet. A man in his 50s mentioned his son's acceptance to Harvard like it was a personal achievement. Nobody made eye contact with the servers. We were ghosts in their celebration, background noise, functionally invisible. Near the service door, one of the kitchen staff, an older man named Victor with military posture, caught my eye for exactly 1 second. The smallest nod. I didn't acknowledge it. Not yet. More champagne here, someone called from table 2. I turned, bottle ready, smile fixed, and counted the minutes until everything changed. Marcus made his entrance at precisely 3 p.m. Jennifer on his arm, blonde and perfect in a dress that cost more than 3 months of my salary. They moved to the head table like royalty approaching a throne. My father stood, raised his glass. To my son, he said. His voice carried without effort decades of commanding rooms, commanding ships, commanding men. 40 years old, partner before 35, everything I could have hoped for. The room applauded. I stood near the wall, hands clasped behind my back, and watched my father toast the son who'd never served a day in his life while ignoring the daughter who'd given 12 years. Memory hit like shrapnel. 26 years old, deployed on a carrier in the Persian Gulf. My phone had rung at 200 ship time, which meant late afternoon in Connecticut. Marcus, calling because Dad's 60th birthday party was that weekend and they needed money for the venue. It's $15,000, he'd said. Dad wants the club, you know how he is. I was on a floating city in a combat zone, watching F-18s launch into darkness. I'll wire it in the morning, I'd said. Thanks, Alex, you're the best. 3 days later, one of my sailors, a kid from Ohio named Miller, took shrapnel from a drone strike during routine maintenance. Marcus never asked about him. Never asked about me. Just sent a photo of the party, Dad smiling, Marcus cutting a cake. The invoice for my $15,000 sat in my email for 3 months before I could look at it without feeling sick. Alexandra. My mother's voice cut through the memory. Catherine Chen, former debutante, current board member of half the charities in Greenwich County. She approached from table 1 with the particular smile wealthy women use when they're about to deliver a message they've rehearsed. Marcus would like you at the family table, she said quietly, for appearances. For appearances. Not because I belonged. Because an empty chair would raise questions. I followed her to table 7. My place card sat between 2 empty settings, buffer zones, so I wouldn't contaminate actual family with my failure. I sat. and watch them pretend I didn't exist. 30 minutes into appetizers, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Once, a long vibration, then 2 short pulses. A pattern I hadn't felt in 6 months. I moved my water glass 3 inches to the left. Set it down carefully. That was all. But Victor, the server with military bearings, saw it. His eyes tracked from my hand to the glass, one nod, subtle as breathing. Something was coming. Across the room, Marcus stood to deliver his thank you speech. "I've been blessed," he began, gesturing broadly at the crowd. "Blessed with family, with success, with opportunities that, let's be honest, not everyone is equipped to handle." His eyes found mine for half a second. "Some people are built for greatness," he continued, "and others," a pause, calculated, "others find their level, and there's honor in that, in knowing your limitations." Polite laughter rippled through the room. I sat perfectly still. My father nodded along like Marcus was delivering the Sermon on the Mount. "Which is why," Marcus said, his voice shifting into something more formal, "I think it's time to address something that's been uncomfortable for our family." The room went quiet. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Cream-colored, heavy paper, expensive. My mother's stationery. I knew before he said another word what was coming. "My sister Alexandra," Marcus said, not looking at me, "has made choices that no longer reflect the values of this family. She's spent a decade in what can only be called minimal employment. She's rejected every opportunity to better herself. And frankly, her presence at family events has become," he paused, "a source of embarrassment." Someone near table 4 inhaled sharply. Marcus walked toward me, slowly, like a man delivering a verdict. "This letter," he said, holding it out, "represents our collective decision that it's time for you to pursue your own path. Separately." I took the envelope. Inside my apron pocket, my phone buzzed again. Different pattern this time. Victor shifted position near the kitchen door. And through the ballroom windows, I saw a black SUV pull into the main entrance. Not the service entrance. The front. Interesting. I opened the envelope while Marcus stood over me. Read each line slowly. "Alexandra. After careful consideration, we believe it is in everyone's best interest that you no longer attend family gatherings. Your lifestyle choices and employment situation do not reflect the standards we have worked to maintain. Effective immediately, you are no longer welcome at family events, holidays, or functions. We wish you well in your future endeavors." Signed, Marcus Chen Richard Chen Catherine Chen. Not even your brother or your father's. Just signatures. Like a business contract terminating an employee. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, tucked it carefully into my apron pocket next to my phone, and looked up at Marcus with the calmest expression I'd ever worn. "Thank you for finally putting it in writing," I said quietly. His confident smile flickered. "Just for a second. But I saw it." Marcus recovered quickly. "I think it's better this way," he said to the room, not to me. "Honesty, clarity, no more pretending." He walked back to the head table. "My sister has spent years making everyone uncomfortable, working minimum wage jobs despite every advantage, refusing to accept help, refusing to grow up." He picked up his champagne. "So let's be honest about what she is. He looked directly at me. She's a 40-year-old waitress who never figured out how to build a real life. The room was silent. Not uncomfortable silent. Eager silent. This was entertainment. My father sat at the head table, nodding slowly, as if Marcus had just delivered a difficult but necessary truth. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Performance, all of it. I stood slowly. Not dramatically, not emotionally. I simply stood. Every server in the room stopped moving. Victor's hand moved to his jacket. Through the windows, I saw 3 people step out of the black SUV. 2 in suits. 1 in uniform. Navy dress blues. Distinct even from this distance. You're absolutely right, Marcus, I said quietly. My voice carried better than his had. 12 years of shipboard announcements teaches you how to project without shouting. I am a waitress. I have been for 6 months, part-time. I reached into my apron and pulled out my phone. Not to call anyone. Just to check one message. ETA, 3 minutes. What you don't know, I continued, my tone still calm, still measured, is what I do the rest of the time. Marcus frowned. My father's expression shifted slightly. I looked at Victor. He nodded once. Then he walked to the ballroom entrance and opened both doors. Wide. The 3 people from the SUV entered the Bradford Ballroom. They didn't hurry, they didn't announce themselves. They simply walked with the particular certainty that comes from knowing exactly where you need to be. The 2 in suits scanned the room once, professional, thorough. The 1 in navy dress blues, a woman, mid-50s, 3 stars on her shoulder boards, looked directly at me. Her eyes moved from my face to my waitress uniform to the apron I wore. Then back to my face. She smiled. Small, private. The kind of smile that says, "We rehearsed this, didn't we?" Marcus stood frozen at the head table. My father's champagne glass stopped halfway to his mouth. The room had gone completely silent. I reached up slowly and untied my apron. Folded it once. Set it on the table in front of my empty place card. Then I straightened my spine into the posture I'd maintained for 12 years. Shoulders back, chin level, eyes forward. The same stance I'd used on deck watches, in wardrooms, in briefings with admirals and captains and commanders. The same stance I'd used when telling families their sons and daughters weren't coming home. Marcus saw it. I watched his confident expression crack like expensive china. What, he started. But the Vice Admiral was already crossing the room. Her shoes clicked against marble with military precision. She stopped 3 feet from me. Came to attention. "Lieutenant Commander Chen," she said. Her voice carried to every corner of the ballroom. Ma'am." As she saluted. Crisp, regulation perfect. I returned it. "At ease, Admiral," I said quietly. She smiled again. "I think we're past that, Alex." Then she turned to face the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vice Admiral Patricia Morrison said, her voice filling the space like a command, "I apologize for the interruption, but I felt it was important to deliver this in person." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a folder. "Navy blue, official seal. Lieutenant Commander Alexandra Chen," she continued, "you are hereby promoted to the rank of Commander, United States Navy, effective immediately." She held out the folder. Your new orders. Command of the USS Halsey. A guided missile destroyer currently stationed at Naval Station Norfolk. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Congratulations, Commander, Admiral Morrison said, and thank you for 12 years of exceptional service, 2 deployments, a Bronze Star, a Navy Commendation Medal with Valor, and more respect from your sailors than most officers earn in 20 years. She stepped back, saluted again. The Halsey is damn lucky to have you. Marcus made a sound. Not a word, just a sound. Like air being punched out of him. He reached for the table edge, his champagne glass tipped. The golden liquid spread across white linen in a slow, unstoppable stain. Wait, he said, his voice cracked. Wait, that's not. Jennifer touched his arm. Marcus. She's a waitress, Marcus said, louder now, almost shouting. She's been working at a diner. She doesn't. She's a Navy commander, Admiral Morrison said calmly. On terminal leave before assuming her first ship command. The waitressing was covered during transition. My father stood slowly. His face had gone the color of old paper. Alex, he said, just that my name. Not commander, not daughters. Just Alex. Like he was trying to make sense of something that didn't fit his worldview. You were supposed to quit, he said. After your first tour, you said. I said I'd think about it, I corrected gently. You heard what you wanted. Uncle Thomas stood up at table 7. How long, he asked, how long have you? 12 years, I said. Active duty, 2 Persian Gulf deployments, 1 to the Mediterranean. Currently stationed at Naval Station Norfolk as a naval operations planner. I looked at Marcus. The waitressing was part-time, during terminal leave, because I wanted to see what you'd all do when you thought I was nobody. Marcus's wife stood up. You lied to us, Jennifer said. Her voice was shrill, desperate. You let us believe. I let you believe exactly what you wanted to believe, I said. I never lied. I told Dad I was stationed in Norfolk. I told Mom I was working in operations. You all just assumed. I pulled the cream-colored envelope from my apron pocket. And this, I said quietly, is what you decided to give me when you thought I couldn't fight back. One of the men from the SUV, the suits, stepped forward. Commander Chen, he said, I'm Agent Reeves, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Marcus went pale. We've been investigating allegations of fraud within Chen family accounts, Agent Reeves continued. Specifically, financial transactions between 2018 and 2023. Funds transferred from a joint account under Commander Chen's name without authorization. He looked at Marcus. Approximately $240,000. Jennifer grabbed Marcus's arm. What is he talking about? But Marcus was staring at me. The party fund, he whispered. I nodded slowly. Every time you called me deployed, I said. Every time you needed money for Dad's birthday or the lake house or your business expansion. I wired it from my savings, but you took more than I authorized. You had access to the joint account from when I was 18, before I understood how accounts worked. I looked at my father. And you signed off on it, because family takes care of family. My father's hands were shaking. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. Agent Reeves stepped beside me. Commander Chen came to us 6 months ago with documentation, he said. We've spent half a year verifying. The evidence is comprehensive. Marcus sat down heavily. His chair scraped against marble. The sound echoed. I didn't know, Jennifer said. She was looking at Marcus now, really looking at him. How much did you know? Marcus couldn't answer. Preston, one of the partners from Table 2, stood up. Richard, he said carefully, did you know about this? My father looked at the table. Said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Admiral Morrison touched my shoulder briefly. Your ship's waiting, Commander, she said quietly. We should go. I nodded. Picked up my apron one last time. Removed the envelope. Set the apron on Marcus's chair. I wore this for 6 months, I said, so I could see who you all really were when you thought I was powerless. I looked around the ballroom. At the partners, the extended family, the country club crowd. Turns out you're exactly who I thought you were. I walked toward the door. Admiral Morrison and the NCIS agents fell in step beside me. At the entrance, I stopped. Turned back. My father was still standing, still frozen. For what it's worth, I said, Mom was right. When she died, she told me, Alexandra, never confuse service with servitude, and never let anyone convince you that quiet strength is the same as weakness. I looked at Marcus one last time. I've been quiet for 12 years, waiting for the right moment. Tonight seemed fitting. Then I walked out of the Bradford Ballroom in my Waitress uniform, flanked by a vice admiral and federal investigators, and left them to explain to 100 guests how they'd just disowned a naval commander at her brother's birthday party. The rain had started. Not heavy, just a mist that turned the country club parking lot silver under the lights. Admiral Morrison paused beside the SUV. That was a hell of a way to accept your promotion, she said. I smiled slightly. You said I could pick the venue. I said within reason, Commander. This seemed reasonable. She laughed short, sharp. Your father's an admiral, she said. Retired, but still, this is going to make waves. He had 12 years to acknowledge me, I said. He chose not to, his problem now. Agent Reeves opened the SUV door. We'll need a formal statement, he said, but it can wait until Monday. Norfolk, I asked. In Norfolk. I got into the vehicle. Through the tinted windows, I could see people streaming out of the ballroom. Marcus, Jennifer, several partners, all standing in the rain looking lost. My father emerged last. He stood under the awning, staring at the SUV. For a long moment, we looked at each other through rain and glass and 12 years of silence. Then Admiral Morrison got in beside me. You all right, Commander? She asked. I thought about it. About 12 years of sending money home to people who called it charity. About deployments spent wondering why my family never asked if I was safe. About a cream-colored envelope delivered as entertainment for wealthy strangers. I'm fine, I said. And I meant it. The SUV pulled out of the country club. Past the Teslas and Merceds. Past the valets who'd watched me park in the service entrance 2 hours ago. Past the sign that read members only. I looked down at the Navy folder in my lap. USS Halsey. A crew of 300 sailors waiting for their new commanding officer. My ship. My command. Built on 12 years of silence that people mistook for weakness. Admiral, I said quietly, Can I ask you something? Anything, Commander. Did you ever tell them, your family, when they underestimated you? She smiled. Once, she said, at my father's funeral. He'd spent 30 years telling people I'd never make lieutenant, so I wore my vice admiral stars to the service. She looked out the window. Some people only learn respect in retrospect. We drove in silence for a while. Then Admiral Morrison spoke again. Your brother asked for $15,000, she said. You gave him $250,000 over 5 years. He asked for help, I said. I helped. And your father's. He raised me to serve. I served. Even when they didn't deserve it. Especially then. She nodded slowly. That's what makes you different from him, Commander. You understand that service isn't about who deserves it. It's about who's capable of giving it. The SUV merged onto the highway. Norfolk was 3 hours south. My ship was waiting. And behind me, in a country club ballroom, 100 wealthy people were learning the difference between a waitress and a commander. One wore a uniform you could see. The other wore when you had to earn the right to recognize. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have known you best? Tell me below. And if you know someone whose quiet strength got mistaken for weakness, send this to them. The ones who wait aren't weak. They're just picking their moment.